For more on the fight against ISIL and its advance on Kobane, I'm joined in the studio by Daveed Gartenstein-Ross. He's a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He also teaches at Georgetown University's Security Studies program, where his research focuses on the challenges posed by violent militias. And it's good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Why don't we start with this violent militia, the Kobane? Everyone painting kind of a dire picture. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely dire, but it also demonstrates some of the lack of strategy on the Islamic State's part. They've been trying to take this for quite some time. It's up against the Turkish border. The Ain al-Arab crossing, which is there, isn't a major crossing into Turkey. Then if they take it, what then? How does it benefit them to be on Turkey's border? It in fact will cause Turkey to get much more concerned, and there's already some rumblings about Turkey maybe getting involved militarily. This isn't a great move on ISIS's part, while at the same time it does demonstrate some of the limitations of the military campaign.
You lead right into my next question, which is there's a columnist in a Turkish newspaper who writes, Kobane is becoming Turkey's war as the coffins of Turkish Kurdish youth who crossed over to Syria to join the Kurds in Kobane keep returning. The nature of the conflict appears to be changing. We've got 19 people dead, these protests with police. This thing's kind of imploding within Turkey in a sense in terms of what is this a tipping point? Can things happen? What's your thoughts on that?
There's a lot going on. You have this history of the Kurds in Turkey, and there's obviously an insurgency in Turkey led by the PKK, a Kurdish separatist group. But traditionally, they're a minority group that has been marginalized by Turkish society. And here you have the slaughter of Kurds occurring right at the border with Turkey. And the Turkish military is literally sitting there on the other side of the border watching the slaughter. Now, there are reasons why that's the case. Going into Syria is dangerous. If Turkey were to go in, they'd face responses not only from the Islamic State, but also by multiple factions on the ground, Islamist militias, Muslim Brotherhood militias, criminal gangs. It's a very dangerous cocktail in there, but the optics of it, with the military right there, and literally tens of thousands of Kurds having been slaughtered right at the border, those optics are terrible, and you could understand why the Kurds are so upset in Turkey.
And you didn't even mention Assad, who's basically a sworn enemy, so that adds to the cocktail as well. We keep hearing so much about the airstrikes. There has to be another dimension to this story that you're keeping your eye on that perhaps we should be watching. What's that?
Well, one thing that's happening, if you look at the Islamic State's current status, they've gained ground in two places. One of them is Kobane, and I think that even though they've gained territory, it's not territory that helps them strategically. The place that helps them strategically is the Anbar province, and really their gains there are masking their losses elsewhere. What it comes down to is actually a single commander, Abu Omar al-Shishani. He's Chechen and has had this kind of brilliant advance. Initially, the Islamic State was on the retreat in Anbar province, as you had special operations forces, the Iraqi military moving in, and he undertook a series of brilliant maneuvers, basically allowing them to fight other groups, waiting until special forces, the Iraqi special forces, ran out of supplies and encircling them, engaging in a series of feints, which brought them really their biggest military victories since the start of the bombing. Absent Abu Omar al-Shishani, the Islamic State's position would actually be far worse today.
Interesting. Let's talk about the FBI reaching out to the American citizenship. Let's play a little bit of the video that they put out there, and then I want to get your thoughts on the other side.
And we're here with the soldiers of Bashar. You can see them now digging their own graves in the very place where they were stationed. They said that we abandoned the fronts and stopped fighting the kuffar to turn our guns towards the Muslims. They lied.
They released this, they are making this appeal. They're getting, I guess, lots of responses. What do we make of the fact that they're going to the public, and what do they hope to get out of this, do you think?
It's hard to know precisely their thinking. I believe that part of it is it's just much easier to identify somebody who's wearing a mask if people knew him, like based on body language, based on the way his eyes look, the way he carries himself. People might be able to tell who that is. I think they determined that he's important. He's in a propaganda video, serving as a spokesman for the organization. He may crop up again. My own thinking is that probably intelligence doesn't identify who he is. And if they understand who this guy is, they can understand some of his social circles, who might be over there, and unravel the network a bit.
That's interesting. I saw this online, and I want to get your thoughts on it. The number of Islamist organizations that have joined or merged with IS has already passed the dozen mark. Are you hearing that as well, that now more are starting to join up with them? I mean, we keep talking about recruits getting people from the U.S. or the West. Is there, are they coalescing there in the area, do you think, or is that not true?
When you say Islamist groups join them, is that in Syria or
Yes,
worldwide?
yeah.
It's a little bit difficult to say. I mean, you have a coalescence of a number of groups. There's two different ways it could be playing. One is that they're melting into IS. The other option is that perhaps they're melting into something else. Al-Qaeda has certainly been making a play to try to get groups to defect, and there have been defections from Al-Qaeda affiliates like Nusra to the Islamic State. Lately, there's some defections the other way as well. It's going to be a little bit murky for a little while, I believe.
We don't have much time, but how difficult is it to keep track of all this stuff? I mean, you really need a scorecard, don't you?
It's very difficult, especially these are actually clandestine actors. Sure, they're on Twitter, and you can glean things from social media, but there's a lot going on that we simply can't see, and trying to interpret that is hard work.
All right, Daveed, always great to see you. Thanks so much for coming in. I'm sure you're going to be back. We'll look forward to it.